Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, it is my pleasure to announce the following guest. The Honorable John G. Finn, Justice of the Wyoming Supreme Court, escorted by Senator Bittman and
Excuse me.
Representatives Craigo and Western.
Joint session will now come to order. All rise.
Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, it is my pleasure to announce the following guest. The Honorable John G. Finn, Justice of the Wyoming Supreme Court, escorted by Senator Bittman and Representatives Craigo and Western. The Honorable Carrie Jo Gray, Justice of the Wyoming Supreme Court, escorted by Senator Boner and Representatives Newsom and Abermuller. The Honorable Lynn Boomgarden, Justice of the Wyoming Supreme Court, escorted by Senator Ellis and Representatives Oakley and Dan Zawanitzer. The Honorable Keith Coates, Justice of the Wyoming Supreme Court, escorted by Senator Guru and Representatives Stith and Jennings. The Honorable Megan Degenfelder, State Superintendent of Public Instruction, escorted by Senator Anderson and Representatives Brown and Northrop. The Honorable Kurt Meyer, State Treasurer, escorted by Senator Steinmetz and Representatives Knapp and Winter. The Honorable Christy Racines, State Auditor, escorted by Senator Kolb and Representatives Lloyd, Larson, and Ottman. The Honorable Chuck Gray, Secretary of State, escorted by Senator Hicks and Representative Nyman and Rodriguez Williams. The Honorable Kate M. Fox, Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of Wyoming, escorted by Senator Nethercott and Representatives Olson and Washut. The First Lady of Wyoming, Jenny Gordon, and His Excellency, the Governor of the great state of Wyoming, Mark Gordon, escorted by Senator Landon and Representatives Harshman and Nicholas.
Hey, Doctor, how are you? Sarge, thanks, man.
I would like to invite the Reverend Thomas Conkleton to please give the invocation. Please remain standing for the invocation.
Let us pray. Lord God, be with our senators, our representatives, our elected officials, the members of the judiciary, and all the personnel who assist them, so that they may be good stewards of what we and you have entrusted them. As we begin this joint session on the 67th Wyoming Legislature, we recall that in the Gospel of St. Luke, Jesus told his disciples, "As the Father loves me, so I also love you. Remain in my love. If you keep my commandments, you will remain in my love, just as I have kept my Father's commandments and remain in his love. I have told you this so that my joy may be in you and your joy may be complete. This is my commandment. Love one another as I love you." With love as our guiding principle, let us put self-interests aside and instead seek to work for the common good of all the people of our great state, so that in seeking the good of all, we might provide for the good of each of our people. But if by chance we should disagree, help us to do so with respect and love in our hearts. As we now listen to Governor Gordon share with us the state of the state and Chief Justice Fox share with us the state of the judiciary, let us thoughtfully consider the challenges and opportunities before us, so that with your divine grace and assistance, we may together be the public servants that we are and fulfill the responsibility to govern wisely and well and with love. We ask this and all things in your holy name. Amen.
Amen. Governor Gordon. Members of the 67th Legislature, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I present His Excellency, the Governor of the State of Wyoming, Mark Gordon. Sir.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. It's wonderful to be here today, and you guys have moved things around a little bit. So, President Driscoll, Secretary Summers, members of the 67th Legislature, Secretary of State Gray, Auditor Racinas, Treasurer Meyer, Superintendent Dagenfelder, Chief Justice Fox, judges, justices, Chairman Goggles of the Northern Arapaho Nation, and Vice Chairman Ute of the Shoshone Nation, our distinguished guests, family, Everett, that means you up there somewhere, and your mom, citizens of Wyoming, both here and joining us online. I enter this room with awe each time I am asked to address you from this dais. I think about all those who've served here and what they have accomplished. And it's not hard to be inspired when you think of their contributions. Today, the Wyoming flag flies at half-staff in memory of Representative Bill Budd. But we've lost others this year. Wyoming history and traditions are at work here. Our people's work ethic and moral fortitude that made Wyoming what it is are a worthy compass and remain that for us now. At the kickoff of the 67th Legislature's General Session It's my honor and obligation to report to you that today the state of Wyoming is strong and her future is bright. Together, and in the weeks to come, we have the opportunity to make her even stronger for our people and for the generations to come. In my message to you, I want to focus on 5 fundamental areas. First, our people, for they make up the fabric of our state. Second, our natural resources, including energy, for these power our state. Third, our budget, because how we handle our finances this year will affect our people and our future significantly. Fourth, our economy, for that's what makes our state go. And fifth, our kids, because it's all about them. You know, there's simply something about Wyoming people and our Western culture that is extraordinary. Folks here know there's more to being a cowboy than simply wearing the hat. It's knowing when to take it off, when to help your neighbor, and what's important to preserve for our children. We are a people with grit, with courage, and kindness in our soul. And I want to share a few examples of men and women who exemplify the spirit of what makes Wyoming so special. Every day, our first responders answer the call to help those in need. It's dangerous work, but still we count on them to pull on their boots and rush to our side when we're in need. Today, I want to honor Tyler Harris, a dedicated EMT and family man from Saratoga with 3 young boys. Just before Christmas, doing his job, he put himself in harm's way, responding to an accident during a winter storm. Tragically, he was fatally struck by a semi. We grieve for Tyler and hold his wife, Ashley, and their young sons in our prayers. We will never be able to thank Tyler enough for his sacrifice, but we can honor and remember him. And I'd ask for a moment to remember Tyler and his family. Tyler's fellow EMT, Tiffany Grutzmacher, was also injured in that accident, and she is still recovering from her injuries. When I spoke to Tiffany's father shortly after the accident, I found out this was not the first time that she had been hit while attending to the injured. In suiting up, despite all, she is the personification of living each day with courage, and we pray for her speedy and complete recovery. Jason Perry is an EMT from Hewlett. He's in our audience today representing first responders. So like many rural communities in Wyoming, Hewlett has limited and dispersed resources, making responding to emergencies all that more difficult. On his own initiative, Jason led an effort to get each of Hewlett's EMTs certified as paramedics. This ensured that their patients would have the benefit of a high level of emergency medical care. Jason knows the risk of his profession all too well. Recently, in the teeth of a blizzard, Jason and his crew responded to an incident at Keyhole State Park to rescue a person who had fallen through the reservoir ice. Sadly, Bruce Lang, a volunteer firefighter from Pine Haven, lost his life in that rescue effort. It's dangerous work, as we all know, and we remember all those like Bruce and Tyler who risked everything in serving Wyoming. But Jason, we want to offer our gratitude to all of your fellow first responders for demonstrating the spirit of Wyoming, courage, sacrifice, and neighbors helping neighbors. Jason, would you stand so that we may recognize you? Thank you. Now, if I can change gears just a little bit, I want to celebrate a very humble and fine cowboy, a rodeo champion. Last fall, Bobby Harris, a proud member of the Eastern Shoshone tribe, was inducted into the Professional Rodeo Hall of Fame. He grew up on a ranch in Campbell County, and in 1978, at the age of 15, Bobby was the Wyoming State All-Around Cowboy and the youngest Professional Rodeo Cowboys Association Steer Roping Rookie of the Year. Since then, Bobby qualified for the National Finals Rodeo 18 times, won the team roping average in Las Vegas 3 times, and held the team roping world record for 15 years. Now, those are impressive accolades, to be sure, but you have to watch his acceptance speech online, and you'll learn what a remarkably humble, gracious, and wonderful man Bobby is. Bobby, the world needs more cowboys like you. Please stand and be recognized. All people need access to affordable and quality health care. And one part of that is mental health, a nationwide crisis, and Wyoming is no different. Depression, substance abuse, isolation, and suicidal thoughts are all too prevalent in all of Wyoming's demographics. We're losing too many of our youth, too many of our veterans, too many of our neighbors. It's so important that I co-hosted a summit on mental health last fall in Casper. It saw all 3 governmental branches coming together to work on improving our services for mental health. Our coordination of efforts and targeting of crucial resources is just the beginning of what we can do. And I'm happy to report that Wyoming launched the first in-state 24/7 988 suicide hotline. Now our people in crisis finally have someone they can talk to, someone who's familiar with our state and eager to help. But attending to people in emergencies or in crisis is only part of what we need to do. We have to reach people before they're in crisis. Wyoming people have always valued private partnerships to help build healthier, stronger communities. And I want to recognize one such partnership, the Hughes Charitable Foundation. The Hughes Foundation supported 300 organizations across Wyoming last year alone, and was the principal mover of our Mental Health Summit. Executive Director Molly Hughes is joining us today, and Molly is dedicated to making Wyoming a better place for all of our residents. She understands government can't solve problems all on its own. It takes good people stepping forward. She and her husband are making a difference in the lives of Wyomingites, and they're doing it with humility and with compassion. Please join me in thanking Molly Hughes and all the private sector and nonprofit entities that give back. Molly, please stand. They've made a lot of progress, and more recommendations are on the way. The progress that I'm talking about is that of our healthcare task force. They've been wrestling with the thorny issues that make up the briar patch that we call healthcare. You're going to see some more recommendations coming on controlling costs, both physical and mental health. And we're also going to work on access. Over Thanksgiving, I traveled with Adjutant General to meet and have a meal with our deployed Guard members. I cherish the opportunity to celebrate Thanksgiving with our men and women serving in the military. They're in far-flung places, quite different from Wyoming. defending our freedom and way of life against those who would do us great harm. Never doubt the value of their commitment. Our Wyoming National Guard remains focused and ready to serve at home and abroad, and we thank them for being the sword protecting our freedom wherever that may be, and for being the shield when they're called upon to meet pressing domestic needs. Adjutant General Greg Porter is here today, and I ask that in recognizing him, we recognize all the guardsmen and women, their families, as well as the employers whose support understands the sacrifice and service of our citizen soldiers. General Porter, you would please stand. Here. Wyoming cares for our veterans, and this past fall in Buffalo, I'm happy to report we opened Wyoming's first skilled nursing facility exclusively for veterans. You all did that. And I want to tell you, and now I want to tell you about an extraordinary and inspirational history teacher at Buffalo High School. Every year, Tiffany Songer works with her students to organize a Veterans Day celebration and salute to honor local veterans. Her students help organize and run the program, which includes an educational piece they share with fellow students and community members, as well as luncheon prepared by the students for the veterans. It's a way to honor service with service and perhaps also to inspire the next generation to serve. Last year, I attended that Veterans Day celebration. It was moving and powerful from beginning to end. And Tiffany, I really want to thank you, and I'd like this chamber to recognize you. Tiffany, can you stand, please? What better way to teach American history and Wyoming values to our youth than to evince our deep and abiding appreciation for our heroes who pledged allegiance to the Constitution and frequently, and sadly, ultimately gave their final sacrifice in times of crisis. Tiffany, again, thank you so much. America is proud of the tremendous commitment made by so many of us, but especially our tribal members who've served our country in all branches of our military with honor and distinction. The Northern Arapaho and Eastern Shoshone are not only sovereign nations, but they are fellow citizens who stood beside us many times. Over the past 4 years, my office has worked hard to forge partnerships between the state and the tribes. We've identified a number of issues severely impacting our tribes, but that also affect us all. I want to mention 2 of those important issues today. First, both tribes have emphasized to me the need to address the epidemic of missing person cases afflicting tribal communities. To help counter this ongoing tragedy, I established the Wyoming Missing and Murdered Indigenous Persons Task Force in 2019 to study the issue and develop a list of recommendations. Their good work has resulted in several worthy recommendations. Among them is one that will come to you during this session, creating the Ashanti Alert System. It's a needed solution to help all Wyoming people. It will function similarly to an Amber Alert, quickly sending notifications to the public about missing adults. Now, I want to acknowledge the good work of the Select Committee on Tribal Relations and look forward to supporting the committee's legislation to further this effort. It's an opportunity to stop more missing person cases at their inception, as well as taking a meaningful step towards curbing human trafficking. Secondly, this year, my office has engaged in discussions about settling long-standing disagreements over tribal, off-reservation treaty hunting rights, made more acute by recent court rulings. Our conversations were based on recognizing tribal sovereignty while respecting the state's authority over conservation and hunting outside the Wind River Reservation. To that end, I am supporting a bill providing the governor's office with the authority to enter into agreements with tribes to resolve hunting rights claims on lands in Wyoming. Finding agreement on this issue will support shared hunting values better than any court decision will, and I look forward to the passage of this bill. As we move through these challenging issues, though, I want to tell you how encouraged I am to have such strong and engaged partners. Please join me in thanking newly elected Chairman Goggles and Vice Chairman Ute. Could you please stand? Now, when it comes to natural resources, we need good partners in Washington, D.C. And unfortunately, with energy, we don't seem to have reliable partners in D.C. It's no exaggeration that the Biden administration appears more interested in partnering with Saudi Arabia and Venezuela than they are with Wyoming. The Biden administration's misguided policies have cost our nation dearly these past 2 years, notably $5 per gallon gasoline that drove inflation to levels not seen in 40 years. And this winter, there are families in America, the richest and most advanced country in the world, living under a very real threat of freezing in the dark. Polite people say that's what you get when a federal government is hostage to zealots that would risk third world living conditions in order to meet their agenda. Blunter people, and we have a few here in Wyoming, would say that Washington, D.C. bureaucrats bungled the energy policy because they pulled it out of what they're sitting on, when we know it is the solution that we're standing on. Quite seriously, the events of the past few years have proven that our economy, our way of life, and national security demand all the energy that Wyoming can produce. Instead of giving fist bumps to OPEC leaders, the Biden administration should be extending a handshake to Wyoming energy producers. Meanwhile, we in Wyoming have to recognize a few things. First, change and innovation are inevitable. They always have been. Second, carbon capture is essential if we are to address climate change and provide a catalyst in the path forward for fossil fuel production. Here's an example that hits close to home. Wyoming has 8 coal-fired plants. They power about 7.5 million homes. Wyoming coal provides reliable electricity to about 1/4 of all U.S. households. It's undeniable that coal remains a vital fuel source for our country. But the minds in Washington, D.C. all seem to want fossil fuels to go extinct. The good news is that we're making progress with carbon capture technology. And remember, carbon capture is not just for coal. For those who would suggest carbon capture is too expensive, and the others who think the discussion is simply foolish, I say things are changing. Later this year, construction will begin on 2 new projects at the Integrated Test Center at Basin Electric's Dry Fork Station in Gillette. Advanced and deploying carbon capture technology requires investment from generators and end users. One key partner is Basin Electric Power Cooperative, and I'm pleased to produce Todd DeLees, Chief Executive Officer and General Manager of Basin Electric. Todd, you and Basin Electric represent what's possible when Wyoming, particularly the School of Energy Resources, and utilities work together to support a legacy industry innovating for the future. Wyoming remains committed to you and our rural cooperatives to make carbon capture on coal-fired plants a shared reality. Thank you, Todd, for your efforts. Would you please stand? And when I talk to people in Washington, D.C., I proudly point out what we've done to establish Wyoming's energy and environmental leadership. The work of prior legislatures on permitting advanced nuclear projects and supporting the development of rare earth materials, hydrogen production, and CO2 capture are important to our nation and to our state's future. And I'm delighted today to announce that our joint hydrogen hub proposal with Colorado, New Mexico, and Utah has made the first cut and received the go-ahead to proceed to the next level. We're making a difference already here in Wyoming. This year, I've requested an additional $50 million for the Governor's Energy Matching Fund. The fund isn't large enough to make any particular project a reality, but it's important that we demonstrate our deep commitment to our resources and our citizens. And Wyoming is becoming recognized for forward thinking on climate, the environment, and energy. Advanced nuclear technology coming to fruition in Western Wyoming will demonstrate another source of safe, reliable, and dispatchable electricity, offering ancillary benefits to Wyoming from new manufacturing opportunities, as well as a revitalized domestic nuclear industry that will contribute to our state tax revenues. You can enhance Wyoming's leadership in this area by passing vital legislation to expand the Department of Environmental Quality's agreement state status, putting Wyoming in the driver's seat with the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. This legislation will allow Wyoming to permit and regulate parts of the rare earth and critical minerals industry, and I urge you to support that bill. But you know, we have other resources as well, and we are blessed in Wyoming with one of the most vital, water. Managing that water in the midst of a historic drought presents more challenges than ever. We in the executive branch are hard at work on many fronts. But right now, I want to focus on a couple: usage and infrastructure. Watersheds across Wyoming are severely stressed. Nowhere is this more apparent than in the Colorado River Basin. Challenges like water curtailments for agriculture, municipalities, and industry are almost inevitable. And we must be prepared to protect our interests. I'm asking again for resources that are essential to boost our ability to respond and advocate for Wyoming water's users effectively. And that's why I urge you to support the joint appropriations budget proposals for the state engineer. The time has come when action can no longer be delayed. It's undeniable that Wyoming's irrigators, municipalities, and industries are at risk of losing some of the authority they have over their future. That is essential that we protect our water. Likewise, old and crumbling infrastructure must be addressed. We're using federal funds effectively in this important area. In 2022, we allocated $50 million for water projects. Bear in mind, though, the demand was 4 times that. And all my fellow members of the SLIB remember those challenging discussions that we had. In the coming years, it's true that the state will deploy millions of federal dollars across the state. But we know all too well that those federal funds come with too many strings attached. And a gap remains, leaving our smallest communities vulnerable. The Wyoming Mineral Royalty Grant Program has filled that gap for decades and remains essential. It's been so critical for communities, especially small communities across the state, to address emergencies, from collapsed sewer pipes in Glen Rock, to ruptured water lines in Thermopolis and Claremont, to the failed water tank in Opal. The SLIB has helped towns make good use of these funds. And I ask you to restore funding to the MRG program. A little bit of comment. Now, we all live in Wyoming because of our wide open spaces and vast natural resources and good people. They contribute to what makes Wyoming so special. We take great pride in responsibly managing our natural resources, from agricultural land and bountiful minerals to wildlife and its habitat. Agriculture and natural resource management in Wyoming are not just industries. They're a way of life, part of our cultural identity as a state, as is the balance of multiple uses of our lands. The way of life is being continually challenged by many in Washington, D.C., who from their desks don't understand nor appreciate how close we live to the land, our wildlife, and our Western culture. Today, Wyoming is involved in more than 30 lawsuits challenging federal overreach and overregulation. And I want to thank the Attorney General's office and the Attorney General for punching far above our weight to protect Wyoming's interests. The Attorney General's team is getting some good results on federal vaccine mandates, strengthening the border, grizzly bear management, oil and gas interests, and simply requiring federal agencies to comply with the law when considering land transfers. Like all things, lawsuits are expensive, and I want to thank the Attorney General for being judicious in how she uses her resources, and the legislature for appropriating to her office the money it takes to fight those battles. Wyoming's ag roots run deep and help define us. General Hill, like a lot of Wyoming kids, has roots in 4-H, and it's easy to see how that time helped her shape her appreciation for all that Wyoming stands for. And along those lines, I'd like to highlight the members of Wyoming's very active FFA. The young men and women of the FFA aren't timid about tying into issues, complicated or not, understanding them and looking at them from all angles. Last October, members of the Cheyenne Central High School team placed first in Wyoming and placed fourth nationally out of 34 teams when debating the Biden administration's America the Beautiful program. They could not have risen to that level if not for the coaching of one of our best. Congratulations to the Cheyenne team of Ashley Kasicki, Lily Routh, Jordan Kennedy, Katie Carson, Carlene Barber, and Aspen Nesvik, and representing them here today, Coach Karen Bud Fallon and team member Haley Cooper. I don't need to remind you that Wyoming was built on agriculture. In this budget, you'll also see requests to expand predator control, control invasive species, to expand water storage, meat processing, as well as to address brucellosis. And I urge you support on all these particularly important matters. Now, as I said at the top, our budget is critical because how we handle our finances this year will affect our people and future significantly. Fortunately, Wyoming finds herself at a remarkable juncture. Federal government, largesse, and energy markets have given us a financial bumper crop. As a Wyoming rancher, I know the value of a good hay year. Because they don't always come around, it's important that we make hay when the conditions are right. Ranchers also know how important it is to set aside excess for the leaner times ahead, and leaner times appear likely. Supply chains, inflation, tight labor markets, and other economic uncertainties may conspire against us, so the actions we take today have meaning. In any budget, in any year, we're always faced with balancing two challenges. First is living within our means. Wyoming's government is the leanest it's been in a decade. Our budget is balanced, we save for our future, and don't run up deficits. Wouldn't that be nice if they did that in DC? Second, we must measure our expenditures according to needs more than wants, and do so while acknowledging that fiscal prudence is more than just being cheap. It requires transparency and knowing when to invest. For instance, we must address the concerns of our most vulnerable and those living on fixed incomes who are feeling the inflationary pinch especially acutely. I've proposed an additional $1 million to extend the property tax refund program for another year, and I urge you support that and consider other means to deal with property tax relief. Inflation is a concern for many of us. And inflation is a concern for our workforce. Wyoming state workers, such as snowplow drivers, troopers, nurses, social workers, and others, are still paid below market levels that they can earn in neighboring states or even in our towns. We can't retain or recruit them if we don't pay a fair day's wage for a fair day's work. In fact, vacancy rates in critical jobs are extremely high. We must implement the second phase of the salary adjustments that you all began last year. Remember, these are the men and women that we depend on every single day. I want to turn now to what we all share in, our economy. As you can plainly see, Wyoming is strong and getting stronger. We're becoming more resilient through diversification, and that means our economy is better able to avoid the booms and busts that have plagued us over our history. Today, I can proudly say that Wyoming's economy is the most diverse it has been in 50 years. We're not leaving any of our legacy industries behind, but it's exciting to note that other sectors are growing. Over the last decade, we've seen double-digit employment growth in leisure and hospitality, manufacturing, finance and insurance, as well as professional and business services. And this isn't slowing down. Businesses from around the state are looking to expand, and those in other parts of the country are looking to relocate to Wyoming. It is imperative, therefore, that we adequately fund the Wyoming Business Council in its supplemental budget. 3 years ago, you'll remember, I came before you with new direction and new priorities for the council. That change has produced new opportunities and increased interest in our state. The time is now to ensure that we can seize upon strong interest in Wyoming and value to our core industries and continue to activate new economic sectors. A diversifying economy also needs a nimble, skilled, and ambitious workforce. Without collaboration by our higher education institutions to meet those workforce needs, those jobs will go elsewhere. And that's why I joined with our community colleges and university to launch the Wyoming Innovation Partnership. This collaboration aligns educational workforce development and industry to support Wyoming's economic development needs. I thank the members of the legislature who have supported that endeavor. And this morning, I'd like to recognize University of Wyoming President Ed Seidel and Central Wyoming College President Brad Tyndall for their work on WIP and on advancing the state. Our university and colleges are partnering in new ways, but in particular, they're working to support the tourism industry by training and growing hospitality workforce. This past year, however, the tourism sector almost suffered a significant setback. Yellowstone National Park celebrated its sesquicentennial anniversary, and for a rancher, that means 150 years. I was proud to be there at Old Faithful when we rang in the opening of the park with all the expectations of a stellar year for tourism, 150 years of the park. Within a few weeks, though, a massive rainstorm fell on an elevated late-season snowpack, causing unprecedented flooding, damaging roads, and cutting off communities. One of Wyoming's most important economic sectors, and indeed the one that hires more people, was facing a bust. Today, we're joined by someone I'm proud to call a friend, someone who recognizes and promotes that Wyoming and Yellowstone share a wonderful commitment to one another. When the flooding hit, Superintendent Cam Shawley worked with neighboring communities to make sure visitors to the park were evacuated, much to the surprise of the national press, without incident. And working with his neighbors, reopened the park in Wyoming on July 2nd, within 9 days. His swift actions saved many Wyoming businesses and jobs that depend on visitation to America's first and most iconic national park. But that wasn't all. Cam and his team leaned into the multitude of challenges to reconnect Mammoth with Gardner, Montana, and reestablish the road through the Lamar Valley to the northeast entrance. Cam gets things done. Please help me thank Wyoming's friend, Superintendent Cam Shawley, for his leadership and for being here today. I began this address by speaking about Wyoming's most precious resource, our people. Let me conclude with our children, the future of Wyoming. Over the past year, my Reimagining and Innovating the Delivery of Education, or RIDE advisory group, spoke to the people who make up the fabric of our communities: parents, educators, students, and business owners. After many months of listening and hard work by the RIDE, we now have recommendations for revitalizing Wyoming's entire education system, from pre-K through higher education. Priority recommendations include student-centered learning focused on student progress that's based on demonstrated mastery of subjects, not sitting in a seat. Pathways of opportunity for all students, utilizing innovative models to address mental health and behavioral issues, and offering a range of early childhood education options. Now is the critical time for education, and we must be bold and take action. If you are as passionate about retaining our youth and homegrown talent as I am, then you must be open to new educational opportunities. And I hope you'll join Superintendent Degenfelder and me in our efforts to ensure our students are well prepared to succeed in today's world. Over the past year, we heard consistently from communities that the strength of Wyoming's education system is in our teachers. Teachers are one of the most important predictors of student achievement, and I agree. In my experience, Wyoming has the very best teachers of any state in the nation. And today, I'd like to recognize Wyoming's 2023 Teacher of the Year. Zach Beam is a physical science, physics, and advanced chemistry teacher at Newcastle High School. Zach is an example of a talented and inspiring teacher who has dedicated himself to his noble profession for the past 10 years. Teachers like him are the catalysts that will ensure future success of our communities and of our children. I thank Mr. Beam and every teacher in Wyoming for striving each day to ensure that all students have a meaningful, memorable, engaging, and powerful educational experience. Zach, would you please stand and be recognized? In closing, I want to say again that Wyoming, and you can see this, is poised to be a leader on so many fronts. Our expertise in resource management, advanced carbon innovation, energy security, value-added agriculture, and fiscal prudence makes us a leader in all of these areas. More importantly, our unwavering belief that government works best when it's closest to the people and is restrained from interfering with their personal liberty. That makes Wyoming an ideal model for other states. I believe that Wyoming people care about one another, and I have to look no further than my beautiful wife. I've been blessed to serve with you and serve Wyoming these past 4 years. And Jenny, I'm so humbled that you, without any government help or funding, established the Wyoming Hunger Initiative to make sure our kids are fed. Now, this is what's really cool about Jenny. She'd be the first to say she hasn't done it alone. But that's the mark of character. God bless you. I love you, sweetheart. I learned early in the hayfield that a good foundation, maybe some of you may remember this, but a good foundation and tied-in corners were important to make the stack that I made stand. And if it fell down, I had to go out on my own time without equipment and fix it. So I'm proud to say that Wyoming is blessed to have a good foundation, and our corners are tied in. We enjoy a government that is accountable, transparent, and accessible. And I'm thrilled that the people that are elected all share that commitment. We can be sure of the integrity of our elections because we know our locally elected county clerks are professional and dedicated. And today we are joined by Platte County Clerk Malcolm Irvin, the president of the Wyoming County Clerks Association. Please join me in showing our appreciation for Mr. Irvin and every one of the 23 county clerks, as well as all the volunteers who assured that our elections were secure and correct here in Wyoming. And I'm thrilled that our Secretary of State takes that charge very seriously. Thank you, sir. Ladies and gentlemen of the 67th Legislature, as you begin deliberating on how best to help Wyoming thrive now and for generations to come, think about this building and all that has happened here, all that has happened since statehood. This moment in our history reminds me of the letter George Washington sent along with our then unratified Constitution to Congress. In it, he appealed to the peoples of the several states to set aside deep ideological divisions and urge the adoption of the founding document of our remarkable republic. General Washington wrote, referring to the deliberations of the Constitutional Convention, "This important consideration seriously and deeply impressed on our minds to be less rigid on points of inferior magnitude than might have been otherwise expected." He further encouraged a spirit of amity and of that mutual deference and concession which the peculiarity of our political situation rendered indispensable. More than 2 centuries later, when our first president words, they still resonate. That while we should speak with our mind, we should also have a servant's heart, so that we can each do our share of the task in making this special place we call home thrive long into the future. God bless Wyoming and her people. God bless these United States. Thank you.
Governor Gordon, on behalf of the members of the legislature, I thank you for attending this joint session and for sending your message to us. Members of the 67th Legislature, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I now present Honorable Kate Fox, Chief Justice of the Wyoming Supreme Court.
Thank you. I had a moment of panic. Senator Nethercott kindly offered to bring my notes up for me, and I thought, what a prank that would be if she didn't put them right here where I need them. But here they are. Thank you, Senator Nethercott, and happy to see the legislature. Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, Governor Gordon, Madam First Lady, members of the 67th Legislature, Judiciary, guests, citizens of the great state of Wyoming. It is an honor for me to speak to you today on behalf of the judicial branch. Thank you, President Driscoll, Speaker Summers, for the invitation to address you. The big news is we now have e-filing in 5 Wyoming courts. Chancery Court, Albany County, Laramie County, Fremont County, and Natrona County. More district courts will be rolled out in the next 2 years, and then we'll start on the circuit courts. This is a great step forward and an important service to the citizens of Wyoming who use our courts. There are way too many people to thank for this accomplishment. Many past and present legislators who had the vision and the drive to get this done. Our former court administrator, Lily Sharp, my predecessor, Mike Davis, and our wonderful application staff led by Heather Kenworthy, and the district court clerks who, even though their elected county officials pitched in to make this work for all the citizens of Wyoming. Our courts protect the rights of the people, whether liberty or property, against the power of the government. The courts handle disputes, large and small, and in Wyoming, we do so efficiently and cost-effectively. As United States Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh said, an independent judiciary is the crown jewel of our constitutional republic. And to keep an independent judiciary, we need your support. I'm pleased to report other significant accomplishments in the judicial branch since I last addressed you. Our Judicial Branch Innovation Task Force has worked throughout 2022 to take a hard look at how the judicial branch operates with an eye towards improving job satisfaction of judges and staff so that we better serve the people of Wyoming who rely on our courts to promptly and fairly resolve legal disputes. The Wyoming Judicial Council received the task force's report in December and has already begun moving forward with some of the recommended actions. First thing we did was change the name of the Board of Judicial Policy and Administration to the Wyoming Judicial Council, so now I hope I never have to say that again. It also more accurately describes the role of the branch's governing body. Next, the Judicial Council adopted a strategic plan which will guide our efforts in the near future. Our number one priority, access to justice, providing resources for self-represented litigants to assist in accessing and navigating the court system. Towards that end, we will place a high priority on establishing a court navigator program. Second, effective operation of the judicial branch to promote a quality workplace for judicial officers and employees. Priority action towards this goal is to provide more resources for judicial wellness, including adequate time off through the use of retired judges, magistrates, and commissioners. Number three, public trust and accountability to promote confidence in the law by providing quality service, enhancing the branch's public outreach. And for example, in April, we will be conducting oral arguments on a You Be the Judge program at Casper College. Thank you, Representative Washut, for helping us set that up. And fourth priority, adequate, stable, and predictable funding for a fully functioning branch. We need your support to obtain adequate resources necessary to accomplish the priorities for the benefit of Wyoming citizens. I must also mention an issue of increasing concern in Wyoming and around the country, and that is the safety and security of judges and their families. As United States Chief Justice Roberts said in his address regarding the federal judiciary, judicial security needs must be attended to if we are to protect judges' ability to consistently apply the rule of law, even when it is not popular. Courthouse and judicial security will be a priority for our branch in the coming year, and we will be asking for your support to implement better security measures. The work of the Judicial Branch Innovation Task Force is inspired by our recognition that courts today perform a very different function than they did even a generation ago. Judges must still be learned in the law, have compassion, handle their dockets efficiently, and maintain a professional demeanor. They must also manage increasing numbers of self-represented litigants, an epidemic of mental illness, and a deluge of administrative and regulatory requirements, from mastering electronic court automation programs to addressing American with Disability Act requirements for jurors. The truth is that, to quote Indiana Supreme Court Chief Rush, courts have become the emergency room for all of society's worst afflictions: substance abuse, mental health, domestic violence, homelessness. Our traditional criminal and juvenile justice framework is probably the most expensive and least effective way to address those afflictions, and we need to find better solutions. I very much appreciate the governor's recognition of the behavioral health challenges facing our state, and I look forward to further collaboration with both the executive and the legislative branches to tackle those challenges. One priority for the judicial branch is to do more with treatment courts. There are currently a number of treatment court programs in many of your communities, and they get very good results. They save lives, they save the costs of incarceration, and they help people become contributing citizens of Wyoming. We support the bill that would transfer the management of treatment courts from the Department of Health to the judicial branch, because we think it's a better fit in the courts, and we intend to make more use of that treatment court model. Toward that end, we are asking for $100,000 in ARPA funds to retain a consultant to advise us on how best practices and most effective use of the treatment court program. The Wyoming Judicial Branch is small but mighty. We account for less than 4% of the general fund. There are 24 circuit court judges, 26 district court judges, 5 Supreme Court justices, and 4 full-time magistrates in the Wyoming Judicial Branch. We are very grateful to the legislature for the addition of 2 new district judge positions this past year in Casper and in Evanston. That has made a huge difference in the speed with which your constituents are able to obtain justice in those districts. We've added quite a few new judges to our ranks in 2022. Judge Matt Castano was appointed to the 6th Judicial District in Gillette to replace Judge Perry. Judge Darcy Phillips to the 4th Judicial District in Sheridan to replace Justice Fenn. Judge Linda Bush to the 6th Judicial Circuit Court in Sundance, replacing Judge Castano. Judge Nicole Collier to the 7th Judicial Circuit Court in Casper, replacing Judge Brown. Judge Josh Eames to the 7th Judicial District Court in Casper, a new position. Judge Ben Curvin to the 4th Judicial District Court in Buffalo to replace Judge Edelman. Judge Misha Westby to the 2nd Judicial District Court in Laramie to replace Judge Cricken. Judge Ed Buchanan, some of you may know, to the 8th Judicial District Court in Torrington, who replaces Judge Coral. Judge James Castee to the 3rd Judicial District Court in Evanston, a new position. Judge Kate McKay to the 9th Judicial District Court in Pinedale, replacing Judge Tyler. And in February, Judge Daniel Stebner will be sworn into the 9th Judicial Circuit Court in Riverton, replacing Judge Roberts. We welcome this enthusiastic and energetic new crop of judges, and we thank the retiring judges for their excellent service. I have some sad news, and that is the passing of Justice Richard Macy on December 30th. He served on the Wyoming Supreme Court from 1985 to 2000, including serving as Chief Justice from 1992 to 1994. As you can see, our Judicial Nominating Commission has been very busy. It's been an honor and a pleasure for me to chair that committee of thoughtful and conscientious people and to be part of Wyoming's merit selection system. There is no better system for selecting qualified people to serve as judges with their eye on the ball, and that is to apply the rule of law. I especially want to thank our 2 outgoing commission members, Gudrid Espenscheid from Big Piney, Anna Reeves Olson from Casper, for their service. And I also must thank you, Governor, for your participation in the merit selection system. I know that the Governor gives a great deal of thought and time into his interviews and selection of the best candidate from the 3 that the Commission sends him. as well as appearing at all our new judge robing ceremonies. We very much appreciate your consideration for the judicial branch, Governor. Wyoming courts handled 112,394 cases in 2022. And in fiscal year 2021, our courts collected $25.5 million. Our judges are supported by about 270 non-judge employees that help keep the courts operating. They continued in 2022 to give us hard work and an attitude of finding creative solutions to whatever challenges come our way. Our clerks and judicial assistants and court reporters and law clerks and judges are there to help Wyoming citizens in what is often the most difficult time in their lives. And they do it with compassion and efficiency every day. Just learn that from the governor if you want applause there. It's one way to get it. I also want to mention our judicial branch administrative staff, who are the unsung heroes behind the scenes that keep things running smoothly. Our court administrator, Lisa Butler, who I see up there, oversees a staff of 36, whose primary mission is to support the trial courts around the state. We have the team rolling out e-filing, maintaining our court technology, helping with the budget, payroll, and HR, putting together judicial education programs and clerk trainings, auditing the circuit court books, and responding to requests for information from the legislature, the executive branch, and the public. These people provide more and more administrative support so that judges can focus on the job of judging. Thanks to you, we were able to give these employees a pay raise in 2022. That doesn't include judges, by the way, who have not had a pay raise and whose pay continues to lag behind even some of the other governmental legal jobs. But for the non-judge employees, that raise helped a lot. Except for one thing, inflation has now eroded all the progress that that raise made. So I ask you for the support of Governor Gordon's request for pay raise for state employees. That would also include judicial branch employees. I think it's critically important that we continue to pay a fair wage to our employees so that we can keep them. We're also asking for 3 new positions in court administration so that Wyoming's courts can continue to perform their constitutional functions for the people of Wyoming. We have ever-increasing demands for accurate data from the judicial branch, and many of those come from this legislature. Sound data starts with reliable and consistent input, and so we're requesting funding for a data trainer to ensure that our clerks throughout the state are inputting data in the same way. In the last 3 years, we've dramatically increased our audiovisual equipment throughout the 73 courtrooms across the state of Wyoming, which has been a huge boon to lawyers and citizens' access to courts. But we need to maintain that equipment to continue to provide these essential services. So we're asking for a position to do that, a person who will be available to supplement the services of our existing contractor at a lower cost and with quicker response. And finally, we need a person to provide the judicial branch with legal advice on the many federal and state regulations that every business and governmental entity has to comply with. This may seem like coals to Newcastle when you consider we have a lot of lawyers in the judicial branch. But those lawyers have a full-time job as judges, and they're not necessarily versed in the compliance requirements of the Americans with Disabilities Act or in the federal standards for providing court interpreters. If we can hire a person to provide that support, our judges can devote their time to the job of judging. We are committed to the transparency of the judicial branch. There's a great deal of information on our website. There you will find updates on e-filing, the Chancery Court, past workload reports, the operating plans of every district and circuit court, most of the judicial learning exhibits, and much more. And of course, our excellent administrative staff and I are available to answer any questions you may have. The state of the judiciary continues to be strong. With your support, we have demonstrated our strength, our resilience, and our determination to accomplish our mission. And that's because of our excellent people. And it's also thanks to the strong and steadfast support we've received from the legislature and from the governor. Thank you for your past support, and thank you in advance for backing the judicial branch's critical needs in the coming session. I look forward to our branch's continued collaboration with the legislative and executive branches. I know that we all share the same intentions: to act for the good of the people of Wyoming while upholding the constitutions of the United States and the state of Wyoming. And I believe we can achieve that. Thank you again for the opportunity to speak with you, and thank you for your service. I don't know if anybody put money on my speech being shorter than the governor's, but it was easy.
Chief Justice Fox, on behalf of the members of the legislature, I thank you for attending this joint session and for your message to us. Senator Landon and Representatives Harshman and Nicholas, will you please escort the First Lady of Wyoming and the Governor of Wyoming from the chamber? Senator Nethercott and Representatives Olson and Washut, will you please escort the Chief Justice from the chamber? Mr. Speaker, thanks to you and the members of the House of Representatives for being our hosts this morning. Majority Floor Leader Hicks.
Mr. President, I move that this joint session be dissolved.
Senate Minority Leader Rothfuss.
Mr. President, I second the motion.
All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. No. The motion carried. Senator Majority Floor Leader Hicks.
Mr. President, I move that the Senate be in recess until 2 p.m.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. No. Senate is recessed till 2 p.m.
You've been overruled.
Mr. Majority Floor Leader.
Mr. Speaker,
Please.
I move that the House stand at rest until 2 p.m.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no.